everyone. We're so happy to have you here for our Waves of Change Manifesto presentation. We are starting a couple minutes late because of technical difficulties, so I'm going to hop right into it. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining from Amiskwaciwâskahikan, which is colonially known as Edmonton, Alberta, and found on Treaty 6 territory. This is the traditional lands of many diverse groups, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. And since we're joining on a virtual platform, I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands that we're each joining from across Turtle Island and the diverse peoples who have served as protectors of those lands for time immemorial. I'm incredibly proud to be able to help run the Decarbonize program that connects students with the environment through a lens of decolonization, not just within Canada, but also around the world. And I really look forward to hearing the children on the call today share their demands for reconciliation from organizations such as yours. I really hope that today's meeting will serve as an important step in our ongoing collective journey towards reconciliation with Indigenous peoples that we share these lands with. Now, just a quick overview of our agenda. I feel like I'm a math teacher again saying we're already behind, but we're already behind. So I am going to quickly pass it over to our panelists to give their welcome messages. I would like to mention that Michael Zink, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada, did have to send his regrets that he wasn't able to make it this morning. So I did remove him from our list. So as I call on the panelists to share their introduction messages and their response to the manifesto, we're going to go in the order that you see here on your screen. So first, I would like to welcome the Honourable Mary Lou McPhedran to say good morning and her welcome message.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone with us. I have to tell you that the Global Center and Taking IT Global are two of my absolute favorite organizations. So I was so happy to be invited to join you. I am coming from Parliament Hill, which is on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the First Nations, Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. And it is a great honor to be with you today. And thank you for the wonderful work that you've done that's going to make our discussion so rich.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the students' presentation today. I'm going to call on next Nicole Strawn, the Vice President of Youth and Education from OceanWise.
Good morning, everyone. Nicole here. I'm joining you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwet'suwet'en Nation in the small town of Duncan on Vancouver Island. I am the Vice President for Youth and Education at OceanWise. I'll just share a little bit about myself and what we do. I started my career with OceanWise about 12 years ago as a summer camp educator. And I've just been with the organization ever since, always working at the intersection of ocean education, youth engagement, and conservation, which is why I'm excited to be here today. This really is my passion, to see youth kind of rise up as leaders for ocean and climate. And at OceanWise, that's what our mission is. It's to ensure a healthy and flourishing ocean for generations to come. And we really do believe in the power of young people as those climate and ocean leaders, especially when we show up to support them with knowledge, resources, and a community of shared values. So thank you for having me today and for the invitation to come and listen to your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for the inspiring words of youth activism. I think it's going to resonate a lot with the students that are on the call. And finally, I'd like to welcome Kathy Warbeck, the Executive Director of Green Learning.
Great, thank you. And I am joining also from Amiskwaciwâskahikan. So Rebecca and I are in the same area and a part of Treaty 6. And I just want to acknowledge that we are all treaty people, and I'm grateful for the learning from many Indigenous leaders and elders that are shared with many of us. And Green Learning, we're a national organization that focuses on supporting educators and students in energy, climate, and green economy education. And we offer a variety of programs that empower youth to be part of the solutions in their schools and communities. So hearing the youth voice today and reading the manifesto, this is something I look forward to, and really seeing how we can further embrace what youth are asking for. And I will say that really, we've worked with many groups, including the Center for Global Education and OceanWise. So we're always happy to collaborate with others. My career has been focusing on kind of environment, energy education for about 30 years. So I'm continuing to see hope in where we're going in the directions, but I know we still have a ways to go. But I'm very hopeful in what I see in the things that I'm seeing in education and other areas. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks again, all of our panelists, for joining us. Just a heads up to the youth, they were sent your manifesto, so they have had time to think about a couple of the messages here, but hearing it from your voice, I think, is going to have a bit more impact on some of those demands that you guys have. I would like to share in the chat quickly before we start a link to the manifesto in case anybody would like to peruse it while we're doing our presentation or save it for later. Just so we don't get confused, a couple of the demands are not quite in the exact same order in the presentation and the manifesto. So don't worry, you're not looking at the wrong thing. That is the manifesto, and that is what they are presenting on. All right, so without further ado, you're not here to listen to me. You are here to listen to the students who worked for hours on this manifesto. So I am going to pass the microphone first to our first youth speaker, which I've jumped over her picture. There we go, Amelia.
Hi, my name is Amelia Gursky. I am a grade 12 from Cold Lake High School, Alberta, and I'm so happy you guys could join us. So, Waves of Change is a national bilingual project that engages youth through a continuum of educational opportunities in every province and territory, in both urban and rural communities. Since 2021, Waves of Change has blended physical events, digital engagements, and an action tracking tool to further climate action process throughout Canada. The project provides learning opportunities to Canadian K-12 youth that make clear connections between climate change, ocean health, and daily actions that can reduce greenhouse gases, to inspire their peers and broaden communities to take climate action. From Cape Breton to Calgary, to Mississauga, Naheawuk, to Mississauga, students share their learning, ideas, and actions through videos, podcasts, blog posts, discussion boards, art contests, and live interactive video conferences. Waves of Change is delivered annually by the Center for Global Education, Taking It Global, OceanWise, Green Learning, and a number of other strategic partners through support from the Environmental Damages Fund, Environment and Climate Change Canada. The program culminates in the co-authoring of a national manifesto outlining our thoughts, opinions, and calls for action around climate change. This year, 195 student participants from across the country responded to our Canadian Student Climate Survey, the results of which were the basis for this manifesto. The Canadian Child Manifesto is Canada's largest child-authored synthesis of student education, opinion, and action on climate change. This year's paper was synthesized during our Canadian Student Climate Summit on April 19th to 21st. This weekend retreat allowed us to review and reflect on the annual survey results and develop the main themes for our climate demands. But it didn't stop there. Participants also took in climate art workshops, model UN climate negotiations, a virtual meeting with our Latin America #Decarbonize counterparts, and many other leadership and team building activities. We also were honored to hear from Paul First Nation Elder Cookham Violet, who inspired us with her perspectives on Mother Earth and the relationships humans have with our shared environment. The summit was more than an opportunity for us to create this paper for all of you. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn and share our similarities and differences in climate change impacts across the country. The biggest impact for me from the summit was hearing Elder Cookham Violet's retelling of the impacts that climate change and pollution has had on her life and her family. It was such a powerful experience to hear her describe the transition from beautiful oasis to startling scarcity. Thank you.
All right, Brock, you're up next. Are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Hi, my name is Brock Johnson. I'm a 16-year-old student from Lacombe Composite High School in Alberta. I have been involved in Decarbonize and our school's environmental club called EcoVision since December of 2023. In the 2024 Canadian Student Climate Survey, students from across the country identified extreme temperatures, fires, pollution, and air quality as the biggest climate concerns for their community. Audrey Cho, a grade 12 student from New Brunswick, shared a sentiment expressing this concern. As a community, we struggle to predict what to do in unique weather situations caused by climate change. As students across Canada, we demand a prioritization of resilience and mitigation strategies that impact climate outcomes that affect the quality of our daily lives. Canadian students, Canadian students demand action remediation and adaptation funding to help address the long-lasting impacts of pollution and climate-induced weather events on our communities. Nearly every student surveyed identified one or more extreme recent weather events as their community's biggest climate concern. Even though we are children, we have noticed changes in the weather patterns and how they affect our communities and environment. Climate-induced weather changes in the form of droughts, floods, forest fires, and extreme weather cause immeasurable health, agricultural, natural, and cultural damage. In Canada, we are fortunate enough to have clean water in rural and urban areas, but many Indigenous communities across our country do not. These are long-standing issues, and yet the water on Indigenous land continues to be undrinkable, and we need to bring more action toward these worrying trends. Communities and the government need to work together to find sustainable solutions to extreme weather, fire, and water quality concerns. Canadian students also demand that their communities have access to clean, nutritious, and affordable food that is shielded from the effects of climate change. Because throughout Canada, we are seeing an increase in food insecurity as a result of climate change. We rely on access to affordable, clean, and nutritious food to reach our full potential as both students and citizens. Canadian farms are affected by increased flooding and droughts, which directly cause crop shortages. We are incredibly concerned about increasing food prices as it leads to healthy food being inaccessible to many Canadians. There is a great need for action to combat food insecurity, such as food programs, especially in schools, to help those in need and increase awareness of the growing food insecurity among Canadian citizens.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Jackson, and I'm a grade 12 student at Harborview High School. I'm coming from New Brunswick, Canada today, so a little bit farther than you guys, but I'm going to be speaking on our views on climate education across the country. Education is power, and I believe that is where real change can truly begin. This is a quote from Hannah Wilkes, who is a 15-year-old student living in Alberta, Canada. As Canadian children, education is one of the most important and direct ways to prepare us to be future climate leaders. However, over 65% of Canadian students have reported that they do not receive adequate climate education in their schools. To improve this startling statistic, we need to focus on fostering climate literacy for Canadian students and educators. We need to become self-advocates so we are not dependent on policies and politicians to speak for us. Canadian students demand the government's financial support for extracurricular climate opportunities and projects. Many of us receive the majority of our climate education through school or community-related climate groups. Climate-focused extracurriculars allow young people to feel supported and create a community of like-minded people. More importantly, this enables more young people to gain interest in the environment and gain experience in the field, which will help prepare the next workforce to fill the green jobs for the future. By funding climate actions through extracurriculars, the government is showing its support for student action, enabling our voices, and fostering a relationship that we will remember throughout our education. Canadian students demand that federal mandates for up-to-date project-based climate curriculum be implemented into all subjects and grade levels. Only 15% of Canadian children who participated in the Canadian Student Climate Survey said they have received the majority of their climate education in school. The federal government must implement nationwide climate education standards so students in all provincial education systems receive an equal opportunity to learn about the changing climate and actions that need to be taken. Based on our survey data, which you can see above, science, language arts, and social studies are only implement climate change into their lesson 29% of the time, and other subjects are even farther behind. Curriculum needs to be more deeply ingrained in all subjects for us to receive an in-depth and holistic understanding. We have a strong preference for project-based climate learning that includes expert presentations and hands-on experiences, as this is the most effective way to instill a passion for further climate education. Children surveyed have received minimal climate education, especially in the younger grades. Canada needs to focus on creating an up-to-date curriculum for children of all ages. It's our collective responsibility to ensure that our students receive accurate and comprehensive climate education, as this is crucial for their future and the future of our planet. Canadian students demand professional development for our educators to stay up to date on current climate policies, technologies, science, and teaching methods. Climate education in schools is only possible with the support of passionate teachers. We rely on the attitudes and dedication of educators to inspire our efforts to combat climate change. Therefore, improving the climate literacy of our teachers through professional development is crucial. There are many ways that educators can participate in professional development. They can attend climate conferences, participate in workshops, attend climate-based skill training, and even engage in research. We also encourage teachers to work with Indigenous leaders to develop a more holistic approach to climate change. By providing educators with this type of professional development, we can expose ourselves to genuine and credible education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Favor Abimbola, and I'm a 12-year-old student at Austin O'Brien High School here in Alberta, Canada. So I'll be speaking on community engagement. It's important to have inclusive community collaboration, dialogue, and action, which are crucial to achieving a sustainable future. Over 82% of children surveyed that they rarely observe Indigenous teachings in our curriculums, which shows us the need for an inclusive conversation within our communities. Climate change will require action from a diverse perspective that focuses on local needs and interests. We must listen, learn, and collaborate to make real, lasting change. Canadian students demand climate change discussions that prioritize the inclusion of child and youth voices and perspectives. The climate crisis in Canada is a child crisis. It is a direct threat to our ability to survive, grow, and thrive. Voicing children's opinions to the government will make a meaningful impact because we all see the world differently. Many climate-related plans do not use these valuable perspectives, and when students or other young individuals come together and use our voices and determination, we can make seemingly intimidating goals become a reality. These child-led initiatives are not just symbolic, they are powerful and inspiring. The children must be heard. Canadian students demand that Indigenous groups be included more extensively in the ongoing dialogue about climate change. Traditional Indigenous knowledge is an invaluable guiding power in combating climate change. However, the government continues to neglect and dismiss Indigenous voices and climate decisions. Over 82% of us children rarely observe Indigenous teachings in our climate education. The prairie provinces are disproportionately affected by climate change, with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba facing the highest warming rates in winter. The prairies support about 40% of Canada's Indigenous population, and nearly 50% of Canada's Métis population. These people are impacted by climate change more than their settler counterparts, with their homes and culture destroyed along with the land. We must listen to Indigenous voices if we want a holistic approach to climate action. There should be more collaboration with Indigenous leaders and groups to discuss different approaches and methods to making changes and reducing climate change. Community engagement. Canadian students demand the government policies regarding climate change address the inequality among global citizens. Developed nations have historically contributed the most carbon emissions. However, it is developing nations and impoverished minorities who are suffering the impacts. Consequences of climate change and current mitigation strategies for those consequences are disadvantageous to minorities and those in poverty. We are a worldwide community, and allowing the privileged to continue expanding their wealth and power gap will be catastrophic for the impoverished. We demand that government policies regarding climate change reflect the global and domestic inequalities among citizens.
Hi, I'm Sage Keene. I'm 17 years old and in grade 12 at Memorial Composite High School in Alberta.
Hi, I'm Hannah Wilkes. I'm 15 years old, and I also go to Memorial Composite High School in Stony Plain, Alberta.
When you get it to work, or you don't know how to work it?
In our survey, over 80% of Canadian children believe that climate change is an urgent issue that must be a priority in government decision-making. We are seeing the results of our human actions, and the government has yet to take impactful action. This is a quote from Sarah, a 17-year-old from Alberta. We children will face the future of ongoing unethical human actions and urge the government to take the initiative to make an immediate change. Canadian students demand that conservation of biodiversity and protected areas be at the forefront of new climate policy. We are horrified by the inaction to protect the land we call home. Wildlife in Canada face a variety of human-induced challenges, including contaminated waterways, disrupted migratory routes, extreme weather events, urban sprawl, and industrial habitat loss. We need to give nature the chance to heal itself, which means keeping business and industry out of our protected lands. Our fight against the rapidly increasing extinction of species can only progress with an immediate implementation of these policies.
Canadian students demand federal and provincial governments must make the climate crisis a priority by taking immediate action on NDCs. We are the future of our country, and we will be the ones to live with the consequences of decisions made today regarding environmental issues. The ongoing effects on our environment are highly concerning, and words are nothing without action. If the government is held accountable for its climate inaction, then we, as a country, can look forward to a cleaner future. Canada needs to actually implement the measures to start rapidly reducing emissions. We don't need awareness anymore. We need action. Canada needs to take immediate action to reduce emissions and commit to achieving its NDCs within the proposed timeline. As you can see in this graph here, most students that took this survey strongly disagree with the statement that our government is doing enough to combat climate change. Canadian students demand increased investments toward renewable energy sources. The fossil fuel industry is not only the highest source of emissions, but it is also a hazard to the air, water, soil, and ecosystems surrounding our communities. We believe that increasing renewable energy use is one of the most effective things the federal government can do to combat climate change. This can be achieved by investing in renewable infrastructure while drastically reducing our financial incentives towards current fossil fuel projects. While we cannot completely get rid of fossil fuel-related projects overnight, we can start the transition early to create an industry which prioritizes renewable forms of energy. Canadian students demand all levels of government implement policies to speed up our transition to non-motorized and public transportation. In our survey, 95% of Canadian children believe that the government should prioritize transitioning to a more public and non-motorized transit system. The overuse of personal gas-powered transportation negatively affects air quality, noise pollution, mental health, and pedestrian safety. A combination of implementing public and active transportation infrastructure, as well as economically incentivizing electric vehicle use, will have wide-ranging effectiveness in all areas of the country. We call on the federal, provincial, and municipal governments to host town halls, referendums, and other modes of public dialogue to find equitable, sustainable, and locally based solutions that will have the greatest benefit in every community. Sustainable and equitable public transportation will be a huge step in supporting Canada's sustainable growth.
Canadian students demand the elimination of subsidies to fossil fuel producers and the increase of corporate carbon taxes. The fossil fuel industry is an ongoing source of massive carbon emissions and other climate impacts. This is why we demand the majority of the tax burden to be placed on these corporations. Historically, our governments have not held these corporations accountable for their share of the climate impacts in Canada. The government's lack of action in this sector through providing ongoing subsidies and incentives to these and other industrial polluters of plastics, pesticides, and aerosols leaves massive corporations harming ecosystems seemingly without penalty. Canada needs to hold corporations accountable for their continued contributions to the global climate crisis. Hi, can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay.
Sorry, I gave a thumbs up. We can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Brooke LeBlanc. I go to Cold Lake High School here in Alberta. I'm 17 years old, and I'm going to be wrapping it up. In conclusion, the voices of Canadian children united in this manifesto echo a resounding call for urgent action on climate change. Students surveyed have expressed a desire to further engage in climate actions taking place in our country, as well as the belief that we can make a difference in the climate fight. Our demands are clear and urgent. Together, we urge our government to prioritize the climate crisis and take immediate action to meet our nationally determined contributions. We refuse to inherit a world marred by environmental degradation and inequity. Instead, we envision a future where sustainability, equity, and justice prevail. This manifesto is not just a document. It is a testament to the power of child activism and the collective strength of our voices. We will continue to raise awareness, advocate for change, and hold our leaders accountable until meaningful action is taken to address the climate crisis. Our future depends on it, and we will not relent until our demands are met. In the graph above, you can see that 57% of students would like to be more involved, and they aren't involved already. Canadian children are inspired and committed to make real change, and we hope that you are too. We ask that you take these demands seriously and commit to taking real action after today's meeting. We look forward to hearing your feedback on our manifesto, and thank you for listening to the climate demands of children across Canada.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brooke, and all of our youth presenters. That was a wonderful, wonderful job. Again, I could watch that presentation all day, every day. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. I would love now to invite our panelists to share their feedback and thoughts from the paper, starting with Senator McFedrin.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And I just want to give a big shout out for all the speakers, the students presented this afternoon, but also to the teams of people with you that made this report possible, this manifesto possible. And what I was asked to respond to some of the practicalities, some of the small p political practicalities for your expanding awareness of this really important report. It's fantastic and it needs to be shared. One thing I do need to talk to you about, I'll just explain if my voice goes a little wonky. I actually have COVID for the third time. So I'm in Ottawa, online with you, and maybe a little bit congested for all this. One thing I do want to say, and it's one of those kind of boring, practical, constitutional law things that actually become very important in understanding how Canada operates as a democracy. In the Constitution of Canada Act, there is something called division of powers. And as you likely know, the Constitution is the highest ranked law in our country. And that division of powers, those sections in the Constitution Act that describe the division of powers, makes it really clear that education is the primary responsibility of provinces. So one of the things that I've noticed in your report, and all of Canada, but I'm bringing this practical point to you because some of the changes that you've asked for, which are important and should happen, I completely support that. can only happen by your interaction at the provincial level with each of your provincial governments. And the kind of national actions that you're talking about actually relate, I think, more directly to if we want to jump up to the federal level, the national level, then we need to be looking at the environment, the Department of the Environment and the Minister of the Environment. And to make it clear that this is a very strong youth message that needs to go to the Minister of the Environment. And I'm telling you right now that I know my team in Ottawa will be really delighted to try and be helpful on that. So let's put that on our to-do list. Let's create a to-do list out of things we want to do so that this report is as widely read and understood and becomes a catalyst for action. And I think I'll stop there because I want to create as much time for other discussion. I'm hoping we'll have some time for it to go back and forth with dialogue. I'll stop with one last point. You didn't mention it, so I'll frame it more as a question. What I hear from young people, and when I came to the Senate of Canada, when the Prime Minister called me and asked about recommending me for the Senate, I asked him what it was that prompted him to call me and make this request. And he said, well, I hear you're kind of good at making changes and the Senate needs to be changed. I agree so much with him 7 years later about how difficult it is to change the kind of institution that I work in Parliament. But at the same time, I also hear from young people that they make efforts and they don't always feel heard and they don't always feel respected by people who hold office. And I just want to frame a question for you. I have a priority, and I wonder how you feel about it. My priority is to lower the federal voting age to 16 and to make it a right for 16 and 17-year-olds in this country to vote. And one of the reasons that I believe that's so strong is because politicians are going to pay more attention to 16 and 17-year-olds if they have the vote. And you have so much to say and so much to contribute. So my question back to you is, what do you think of that idea?
Do we have any of our panelists that wanted to unmute and give a response to it? Yeah, Joanna?
I am almost out of that age. I'm about to turn 18, so I'm almost there anyway. But I will say that I feel like when you are 16, you are in the prime of your education. Like you are actively learning about all of these issues in a school or in these groups. It's when you're often most involved with your community, I find.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of start to age out of those things as you're starting to vote. So they're kind of not at the forefront of your priorities anymore. And I feel that if students had the opportunity at age 16 to take the things they're passionate about then and make a difference with them, that it would create a huge impact on what you would see as priorities from the younger voting age.
Thank you. I agree with you, Joanna. Happy to hear from anyone else on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Amelia.
I just want to say, for those who are probably going to oppose this and say that, oh, it's not necessary because, this is drastic measures. We have to take drastic measures because at this point, we're just being trampled over. And I think it's the right move for us to finally be heard because nothing else has worked. So we've got to do something, and it's an action. So.
Thank you very much for that. I do want to also give a shout out to the Center for Global Education because a couple of years ago we did a joint project on this very question, and we heard feedback very similar to what you've given us just now, and some really excellent suggestions from students across Canada. And a lot of what they recommended actually is part of a national campaign that we're in the midst of. And on May 29th, we're having a youth summit on Vote 16 in Ottawa. And there will be some online options. So I'll make sure we share that information with Sarah and Rebecca. And you're very, very welcome if you're able to join us online.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I did tell the students today, I said, I'll keep notes, but you guys should keep your notes as well, because I'm sure that Senator McFedrin is going to have some good options for further engagement. So thank you very much. I would also like to share one thing. We did actually talk a bit about Vote 16. We had this very rich sharing time at the end of our summit together, where students kind of talked about their dreams for what a world without climate change looked like. And one of the things that they talked about was sometimes people don't want a 16-year-old to vote because maybe they won't understand politics well. And then one of the students said to me, who understands politics better than a student who's learning it every single day in their school?
Yeah.
And I feel like I had to share that, because I was like, yeah.
Yeah, it's very practical. And one of the things that we do know from research that's been done, and luckily there's a lot of research now, mostly in other countries. Austria, for example, lowered their voting age to 16 in 2007. So there's lots of really good research on what that actually meant for their democracy. And one of two key takeaways from some of that research: one, when you vote young, you vote long. It becomes a lifelong engagement with your democracy. And the second is that the engagement of younger family members actually tends to increase the engagement of all family members who maybe rediscover the relevance of voting.
Right. Awesome. Thank you very much. I think that's a good point to transition. I'm going to pass the microphone next. I'll call on Nicole Strawn to share her feedback to the manifesto, please.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to all of the students that put so much time. I know it was this group and then many more that contributed in some way. So I'm really excited to hear what you had to say, and very well done. I have a handful of reflections, but I'll try to narrow it down to a few key ones. But I wanted to start just by calling back to one of the quotes that I saw in the written version from Jasmine Yao, the quote of, "My biggest concern is ignorance. People pride themselves too much as the rulers of the world and the manipulators of natural resources." I think that one just really reflects the real heart of the challenge that we're facing in the environmental space. It's this idea that people are seen as other or separate to nature. But for us to achieve that real change that I think we're all striving for, as a society, we need to start seeing ourselves as part of nature. I think it's very obvious. Nature provides us with all of our basic needs: oxygen, water, food, places to live, but somehow we still have that disconnection. And we're really missing that understanding as a society on a whole. I feel like people on this call really understand it, but in the broader landscape, I think we're missing that understanding that not only do we have an impact on climate health, but also climate health really impacts our own health as individuals and as a society, and nature on a whole. So that seems to evade us still. I'll kind of focus in, I think, on a few of the education pieces that you brought up, just because that's what resonated the most closely with me and in the work that I do. First off, I think one of the things you called out was the idea that there's a need for more project-based climate learning in your classrooms. And I think when you were speaking about this, you weren't just talking about good environmental education practice. You were really tapping into something that education on a whole is needing. Project-based learning is what kind of I believe is one of the best ways that we can deliver education programs. It's not just allowing you to develop knowledge around a subject area, but it's also allowing you to exercise your critical thinking, learn about the interconnectedness of systems, and also develop all of those transferable skills that are going to make all of us much more effective in the world, such as communication and teamwork and problem solving. So I loved seeing that in there. I think you also spoke about another one that really stood out to me was the idea that we're not bringing climate education into our schools and especially to our younger grades. It's something I've heard time and time again. They're too young to understand the complexity of climate change. They're too young to start learning about climate. It's too doom and gloom. But I think it's really important that you've highlighted that we start that education sooner. There are so many ways we can start to familiarize young students as young as 5. I mean, we do climate education with young kids, and I don't think that there's any reason that we can't. They learn things. I once had a student 5 years old in one of our camp programs tell his parent to turn off the truck while he said that idling was no good because it was going to melt the ice for the penguins. So maybe he didn't understand the process, but he understood the importance of it and the actions that he could take. So never too young to start learning. A couple other key ones I wanted to highlight were you talked about extracurriculars to allow young people to feel supported and create a community of like-minded people. This one I think resonated with me the most because we lead a lot of extracurricular youth activities in the climate and ocean space, and I've seen firsthand the benefit that these programs can have. And I just wanted to add a comment on why these are so important. The concept of community in climate action is really, really important. It's, from my perspective, it's how we transform that like anxiety and eco grief into agency and into action. We call this collective action, and it's known, it's out there that by engaging in collective action, we can manage and protect against depression related to eco anxiety. It helps us combat feelings of despair and helplessness. And through it, we have access to like community connection, social supports, a source of hope. And that's kind of what motivates us to keep going and doing the work, even when it seems like the problems are too big. And it really is a way to kind of regain power and build agency over our future. So I loved seeing that there's a push and a call for kind of these extracurricular spaces that bring those communities together. And I'll end it off with just cognizant of time, the piece around educators staying up to date and a demand for professional development for educators. Just wanted to reinforce this. It also really resonated with me. We've been referencing a few stats from a report in Canada that came through in 2022 that said while Canadians feel we're experiencing a climate emergency and think schools need to give climate change education a high priority, only 1/3 of our educators feel they have the knowledge and skills to teach about climate change in the classroom. And I think 64% were reporting that they need professional development to effectively teach the topic in the classroom. And that's really where our work at OceanWise intersects with what you're asking for and your demands. We're kind of looking at ramping up our professional development offerings to teachers and really seeing we do programming in classrooms, we'll do video calls, we visit schools, we work directly with students, but we see kind of equipping and empowering our educators to bring climate and ocean literacy into their classroom themselves and through a range of different topics to be probably the most effective way we can start to build that movement for climate action in our classrooms and everything. So I just wanted to highlight those were the ones that really, really stood out to me. I support those. We were also asked if there was anything that we can do to help, and I've got a list, but maybe I'll just pop it in the chat and let someone else take some time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I would like to say as well, your mention about the teachers that don't feel equipped to do climate education. I just have to say that also none of these students would be here without the teachers that are taking the extra time and energy to learn about climate change and share that with their kids. So like none of this would be possible without all of your amazing teachers. I know that you thank them all the time because you guys are amazing students, but I think it's important after this that we remember to go thank our teachers for going above and beyond and making this possible. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to call finally on Kathy Warbeck to share your responses, and then we might have a little bit of time for a couple more questions before we wrap up.
Great, thanks. I will have similar thoughts to what Nicole has shared as well, but I really just wanted to say that you did a wonderful job on this paper in your presentations today. The images, the graphs really supported your messages, made it really easy to understand. And the fact that you surveyed, youth across Canada and utilized all that information to create very clear demands, that's not an easy task to do. And that's a skill you will use forever. I do that every day in my job. So fantastic that you were able to do all of that. A few things I really liked was the inclusion. We know climate mitigation is so important to kind of reducing climate change, but the fact that you're also talking on the adaptation, the climate readiness that we need because of forest fires and flooding and things like that. And I would say that our education is even further behind on that piece, as well as the climate mitigation. So really great to see that. And that includes like the food security and access to clean water. That was fantastic. And that you really covered all the aspects of climate change, including biodiversity, the energy transition, and transportation. I will echo Nicole that ask for more project-based climate in your school. All of our programs are about kind of that project-based solution focus, getting students involved in action. And we're still finding that's a hard ask of teachers still. So I think that was great to see that. And then I really like that you brought in the extracurricular, because that allows you to our like youth to be involved right now in creating solutions and not waiting for the curriculum to catch up. So I really liked that was included. And again, with Nicole, all of our programs, I think, support some of the things that you ask. I was almost like you defined what green learning is all about in your paper. So, we're really providing the learning and opportunities, but it is about empowering youth in the energy transition, climate action, and green economy. So always check out our programs. I'll talk a little bit about our action challenges. But I'm also finding we do provide the professional learning for teachers and supports, but we're also finding that by going into the classroom, it sparks the students' interest, and then they're asking their teachers for more. Or we're hearing that parents are getting things involved in their school. So asking your parents to ask for it at parent council meetings, asking your teachers that we want to be involved in these actions and we want to bring in these people. That is one way to get things started. I think if you talk to EcoVision in Lacombe, it was students that he was talking about things and they challenged the teacher to say, okay, well, what are we going to do? And EcoVision came out of that. So you do have a very powerful voice in asking for these things and getting things started in your school. I also like that you really brought in the Indigenous learning. I know we've taken a few steps to showcase what some of the First Nations are doing, and we've just created some videos with 6 nations of the Grand River that we'll be showcasing in the fall. But it just emphasized for us that we have to continue to move in that direction as well. So you were also inspiration for us to keep our efforts moving forward and not just continuing with what we know and is easy to do. Our action challenges, we have 5 of those. We just closed our submissions for this year, but we really showcase those projects, what the students have done in their schools, the actions that they're doing. So watch for that in June. We'll be sharing that, but think about those for next year. I'm sure, Rebecca, we can share links if they want stuff to any of the website or programs. I think some of you at the summit heard about e-cards. So you have great messaging in your paper. And so I would say continue to write e-cards and send them out and put those in. We send them to decision makers kind of on your behalf as well. So I think that's another good way to kind of take this paper in short snippets and share it. And I think I really liked in your conclusion that, and this is one thing I always say when everyone talks about youth are the leaders of tomorrow. You're the leaders of today. Don't ever forget that. Your paper highlights that you can and want to be part of the solution. So I just don't ever forget that. And I applaud you on all of your efforts in being the leaders in your school and community. And I would also encourage you, as you do your work, ensure that you're also showcasing the solution, whether it's a project in your school or even bigger projects in your community. There are many folks working on solutions. I think when you see that, it helps you also feel less alone and that there are people working with you. So do check those out, because it does help us show that we can do this, both for youth and adults. You bring these messages home for your parents. The parents, we talked about it with voting. It's the same with this as well. I was just talking at an event yesterday and people were saying, it was Earth Month now. And my children brought home, well, every day is Earth Day, right? It's not just one day. So those messages, so she's like, okay, now we're doing this and this and this. So do take those messages home. I think that's where a lot of these things make that shift in our society, is by you sharing what you're learning, what you want to do, what you want to be part of. So that's what I'm going to wrap my little few minutes with, is you are the leaders of today, and keep up the great work.
I love that message. Thank you very much, Kathy. I wanted to highlight a couple of things in the chat, and just so everybody knows, all of the youth participating today and our schools that are watching on YouTube and maybe weren't able to make it to the live. I'm saving all of these chat messages with all of these ideas of ways that you can get involved, and I will send them out as an email afterwards. Christian from Environment and Climate Change Canada says that you should be sharing your manifesto with their consultation on environmental learning. And we have a list of a bunch of ways from Nicole with OceanWise of ways to get involved. So if you have not accessed, make sure you check out the chat and see all of those, and I'll send them along as well. We do have maybe just like 2 more minutes if we have any last questions or comments from any of the youth participating or any of our panelists. As we maybe think about our last ideas here, I would like to highlight what Kathy said about the e-cards, because we have so many amazing artists in this call right now, but also in your environmental groups. I think it is a great idea to go home and over the next month have the Envi Royals or our EcoVision in Lacombe, have you guys sit down and submit some art as e-cards. You can take the demands from the manifesto and you can share them with the decision makers that you think could have the biggest impact on each of those outcomes from the manifesto. I think that's a really great idea to help share kind of those provincial things, because we have students from coast to coast here. So a great way to kind of share that out to everyone. So last call before we do our group picture. Do we have any other thoughts, questions, or comments from any of our participants today? I'm doing my teacher wait time. Wonderful. Okay, before I do our thank yous, because we're always going to forget and I don't want to miss this wonderful opportunity, I would love to get a group shot of all of us together. So if you're participating and you would like to have your camera on, even if you're not a panelist, we still would like to see your face if you'd like to. And to all of our presenters, if we could kind of get close to our cameras so we can see all your faces well, and we'll get a group shot of everybody together. That way we can share it out with the world. Oh, that looks wonderful. Okay, ready, big smiles. Thank you. Oh, that looks great. Awesome, thank you. Favors back. Great. Thank you so much. I am just going to do one last quick screen share because I would love to thank everybody who made this possible. So the Waves of Change program with funding through Environment and Climate Change Canada clearly has had an amazing impact on the student presenters today, but all of their environmental clubs across the country. So thank you very much to ECCC for making that possible, but also our partners in the project, taking a global OceanWise and green learning. I know everyone's saying all of the demands from the manifesto are exactly what we do. Totally. So we're all out there kind of doing that hard work. And I hope you guys can see that it's starting to pay off. And of course, Cengage and Trottier for helping kind of amplify this voice for us. I'd like to say a special thank you to Senator McFedrin for making time to sit with the students today and sharing those different initiatives that they can get involved with. And to all of our panelists, Nicole and Kathy, thank you very much for making it. And of course, to Environment and Climate Change Canada, we're sorry that Michael was not able to be with us in person, but we're hoping to get the manifesto in your hands so we can hope to see some real change. So Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I appreciate all of the time and energy. I love my job, so I'm happy I was able to be here. Awesome, wonderful. Have a great afternoon, evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was really great.
Thanks, everyone.